So, Undertaker made some headlines with a very Joe Rogan podcast. Now, Undertaker's retired. We can acknowledge that. Undertaker has been retired. We're happy for him and he's enjoying his life. But he showed up on the Joe Rogan podcast and said some things that pissed everyone off, except those who are defending him, thinking he is 100% right and 100% correct, and everything he says is gospel. Okay, so let's try to unpack this a little bit. So, what Undertaker said is a bit of a head scratcher on certain things, but we live in a world where supposedly nuance and discord is allowed. So, let's try and unpack this a little bit more than instead of outright saying he's completely wrong, because he did make some good points, I think, at some point. Then like a lot of things, he says something that completely wrecks the entire point, to like a slow moving train wreck, and we're left with this. So Undertaker showed up on the Joe Rogan podcast. Yeah, we all know that show, right? Uh, yeah. And now Undertaker's been doing podcasts a lot lately. He's been doing booking appearances. Since he's retired from wrestling now, and he's able to be himself more than ever. But yeah, so this wasn't gonna be a big deal. It was gonna get a lot of attention because, well, it's Joe Rogan's podcast and it's The Undertaker, Mark Calloway. So what would you expect to hear from him? Well, he went ahead and shocked some people about shooting on the WWE product. Uh, it was kind of amazing he did that, because he's always been so loyal to Vince. He's been loyal to the end, even when he's all right being screwed out of 75% of his commission of the cameo appearances, when he only gets 25% of the scraps, while Vince keeps 50% and Cameo gets their mandatory 25%. Remember, Vince cried when he brought up about Mark Calloway and regarding how he felt about him. So, moving on from my conspiracy that Vince was secretly hating everybody, um, yeah. So Undertaker showed up on the Joe Rogan podcast, and there was a bit of a headline that happened. When I heard this, at the last part of it, it's the thing that got me riled up a little bit. So let's unpack this before we get to that comment. So he was talking about the WWE product, and here are some quotes I had to get from Phelan Productions' video of Undertaker is kinda right about WWE. So this is what was quoted from the Joe Rogan show. It's tough right now for me because the product has changed so much. It's kind of soft, you know? Okay, so let's try and deconstruct a little bit what Undertaker, I think, is trying to say. So really look at it, like, remember how people like to say, oh, we want the Attitude Era back, or we want the Ruthless Aggression Era back, or we want something actually trying with effort. Like, WWE is kind of soft in its way of presentation. Like, how long did it take for them to say, let's finally turn Roman Reigns heel after his requesting of it, even though there was tons of fans that wanted them to take the leap? How many times did they want to have John Cena turn heel, and they only did that when he was done? And then they finally did the trigger when, you know, he fought Bray Wyatt in the Firefly Funhouse match. We got that. And even then, Cena fell to death and now is trapped in forever in the prison of endless torment, probably by Bray Wyatt's hands. But, yeah. Like, really, if you think about it, you gotta have a point on that, where Undertaker could say the product is kind of soft. Also, I think it's way over productions, because the production value is so bright and sterile. Like, it doesn't feel like it's a wrestling show. It feels more like we're trying our best not to be a stuntman game, to me at least. Like, it's so sterile. It's not feeling anything like that grittiness to it. It feels like something's really missing on that. And then you got WWE management who don't want to take any more leaps of faith anymore these days, like they were going to once upon a time in 2012 with John Cena turning heel against The Rock, but they never did that because, he does all the charity work, therefore we can't do that, even though we've done that with other people before. And we didn't even publicly talk about our charity work. So there's that. And So yeah, I can understand if Undertaker's point was if that was the point Undertaker was going for, but the idea that it's stuff like there are some good stuff still going on in WWE. Like you got the storyline with Bray Wyatt, you got the Drew McIntyre stuff. Like Drew McIntyre will kick ass and take names. You got Randy Orton. You got Roman Reigns with the Tribal Chief stuff. So it's kind of soft, but it is soft. I can understand that, but it has some good elements to it. And this is what he said next. I'll probably piss off a lot of people, but they need to hear it. It is what it is, what it is. But to the young guys, oh, he's bitter. I'm not bitter. I did my time. I'm good. I walked away when I wanted to walk away. Yeah, I am still iffy on the whole walking away on his own terms. It was more because to this day, I still feel like he should have walked away a little bit sooner, especially after the Goldberg fiasco. Like, yeah, I just really hated how we were seeing Undertaker doing all these Saudi Arabian shows and putting his life on the line for us. But it just felt like I just really want Undertaker to be to live longer, to be around healthy with his kids. Like he almost died in the ring when he fought Goldberg. If he had a couple of inches, he would have been dead or paralyzed. So yeah, I don't think he's bitter about the youngins and whatnot. Like he'd probably say, "Oh, I wish I could do these things when I was younger, but I did my time. I left my mark." But he did say this next. I just think the product's a little soft. There's guys here and there that have an edge to them, but there's too much pretty and not enough substance. I think right now in that era of guys too, those were men. You go into the dressing room nowadays and it's a lot different. So this is where we're going to get to the controversial part. So yeah, from this quote alone, you can understand what he's trying to say. Like there is the edge to them. There are wrestlers like I mentioned, Roman Reigns, Drew McIntyre, Bray Wyatt. They all have Randy Orton, and they all have something going. They're the carriers of WWE at the moment, along with Alexa Bliss. You got Sasha Banks, who had to stand up for herself. You got all this stuff going on with WWE, and the whole too much prettiness. It could also be a dig on the whole WWE's extreme production value is overtly expensive and clean and not enough grind to it. It just feels stagnatic a little bit on that. It just feels like they don't want to be dirty because it might piss off the investors. Then it gets very, 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 very. Oh my god, it gets so fucking wrong. So Undertaker had something going with those parts. But then it's this last quote he does that bugged a lot of people the wrong way. I remember walking into my first real dressing room, and all I saw were some crusty effing men. Half of them had guns and knives in their bags. Shit just got handled back then. Now you walk in there's guys playing video games and making sure they look pretty. It's evolution, I guess. I just don't know what it is, but I just like those eras, man. I liked when men were men. Okay, so allow me to go off a little topic here. So there was an article that was talking about the AAA game development regarding Cyberpunk and all the debacles going on with that. Now, they had something going. They said how Cyberpunk is the amalgamation of everything that's wrong with the AAA industry. Then they went with the Nazi comparison, and then they lost complete arguments here. So they watered down the entire argument, going with the Nazi route, saying how people voted Hitler for Person of the Year back in the olden days before World War II broke out. That's kind of what happened here. Not the Nazi comparison, more like you had something going here, then you went too far on that, and now you've wrecked everything. So the whole now you walk in there's guys playing video games and making sure they look pretty. Okay, so the pretty part, like that's okay, you can make an argument there, but it's the whole Vince is more interested in a guy's look than, you know, their talent, because, you know, in Vince's world, talent means nothing if you have the awesome muscles and pretty face, or if you're a woman, blonde hair, or if you were a celebrity. So, yeah. But the part where he goes ahead and says there's guys playing video games is like, we're all in a world of geekdom now. Everything's all geek pop culture references. I mean, is it really that bad? I mean, everyone likes to be buddies with each other now. Not everyone's violent and vindictive. They want to start trusting people in the locker room. You know? So if they play video games, that's their prerogative. I mean, I play video games. I have friends. I hang out with my boys. So I hang out with them. I'm having fun. And what's wrong with the guys in the locker room? So the part where he talks about the guns and knives stuff and the shit got handled back then. Bruiser Brody's still dead. Oh, remember Bruiser Brody? The guy who died in the late 80s, who was, as Undertaker pointed, was stabbed, knife wounds by another wrestler as part of the shit just got done. Okay. This is the part that bugged me, because you are essentially, because this kind of sounds like you would have, I even wrote this on Twitter. I said, so wait, is Undertaker saying the murder of Bruiser Brody is a good thing in your philosophy? Because if it is, that's kind of bothersome, and I'm wondering what's wrong. Because why? Why would you say that? I mean, I'm like, I get it was back then. That was an old era. But to say that era was, I liked it back then. Men were men. And okay, I must stress, Bruiser Brody is dead because of that. Men were men and shit just got handled back then. And you have New Jack. Remember him? The very racist, psychopathic wrestler who would be not afraid to say some of the most messed up things that was going on in the country at the time, and would say these horrible things to piss everyone off, use fear. He would actually stab the wrestlers. He would mutilate them. He would wound them. He tried killing one wrestler because of an accident in ECW. And you're saying that era where all that baggage exists is better because men were men? I mean, I get to some extent what Undertaker's trying to say, but when you add in, then, like, Undertaker's from that era and whatnot, but when you add in all the collective stuff that came out of that era, like all the darkness, the drugs, the steroids to the extreme, the unrestricted, unregulated problem of wrestling, and the distrust and bitterness that went on in the locker room, from what I always hear from documentaries where they show all this dark stuff that happened, like Dark Side of the Ring covers that a lot. It's just, you can't honestly say, I can't imagine anyone saying that era is way better than what these youngins do now. They like to play video games and be friends. And there's still backstabbing from time to time. It's just not as poignant as it is now, and it's not handled through violence. It's just, I'll walk. And yeah, I mean, and here's the thing, the part where wrestlers are saying they're soft, okay, so so someone actually tried to say, oh, well, maybe Undertaker was talking about how, you know, how fans get involved in the show and want to be part of the action. Okay, I could probably understand that, but there's a problem here. The wrestlers do still do that. It's just WWE doesn't. Like, Drew McIntyre, when he was wrestling in the Independents again after he left and got ripped, like, he was there's a famous video and gif around on the internet that shows him wrestling a match in the crowd and he gets hit in the head by a fan, he first shrugs it off like, oh, maybe the fan just got excited. But when he got hit twice, he realized, oh, this guy want to fucks with me. Then he beats the holy hell out of him and just gets back to the match, and there was no repercussions on that. But WWE is operating under the we are a publicly traded company. They could claim they're the victims in all this, even though we have video evidence against them, and we could destroy them in court like we always like to preach we do. But we don't really want to cross that line with them, because we'll just have our security guys handle it. And if any wrestler defends themselves with like endangerment, and we'll just blame the wrestlers for it. Unless it's the Bret Hart situation, in which case then all the gloves come off because you attacked a defenseless old man who has numerous health problems and can't move around as much as he used to. If this was the 90s and Bret Hart was tackled, they would be removing Bret Hart from the guy because Bret Hart would demolish that guy. So, yeah, I can be honest about that. But now, when Bret Hart can barely walk and whatnot, and like that's when the gloves come off to them. And even Dash Wilder earned praise from everyone when he knocked him the hell out after he was carried out. Sadly, Vince did not still care, but yeah, that's a problem with him. And people were mad about this, like not just fans, but like Xavier Woods risked his entire career just now, committed career suicide for some, saying this on Twitter. I wouldn't be the person I am without the guidance and lessons of a few key people from the previous generation of wrestling. They taught me to me about business, to save my money, and that having video games in the locker room is healthier than having redacted. Thank you, guys. So, Xavier Woods has called out the Undertaker. He doesn't directly say his name, but we all know who he's talking about. Trent makes a joke saying, bad take. Undertaker needs to be put in jail. I think you misunderstood my tone, though. So, yeah. Oh, God. I'm like, Undertaker, you had something going here. You had good points going on, man. But the last part, the knives and guns mentality, the old guard era, where drugs were running rampant in the industry, where there were steroid scandals, Vince could go to jail thing that was an actual real threat, or, the remaining traces of the old generation that led to various tragedies that I will not get into. That's not related to Bruce Brody or New Jack. You know who I'm talking about. I will not talk about that. But the fact that if Undertaker was a bit more descriptive of saying, I know, like if he had just simply said, look, I know it wasn't perfect, and I know this is a different generation than mine, I'm just more used to the olden days, fine. But this was kind of a bad idea to go with. I still respect Undertaker. I still like the guy as a wrestler. I loved what he's done for the business. But I think there's a much bigger problem here regarding the wrestlers don't really seem to take the risk anymore. That some people, like, I heard some people say this, how they said, most guys there are just there to get a paycheck. Okay, how do you know that? And two, here's a theory I have. What if they want to get that push, but they know they can't work with Vince in that direction? Like, here's the thing I've said repeatedly about Vince McMahon and his booking idea. Remember when Roman Reigns was booked to fight Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 31? He won the Royal Rumble and all that, and that pissed everyone off. I get the feeling there was more to that pissed off moment than just related to Daniel Bryan. It wasn't because it was just Daniel Bryan. It was because, and this isn't just my opinion, my theory, it was because we knew that was going to happen a year in advance. Think about that. You already know what the main event's going to be a year in advance. So when you have this booking thing saying, you're going to main event WrestleMania, we're going to do it a year in advance and build you up, even though there's like a ton of variables that could go horribly wrong if it went that route. Oh, and have no backup plans if things don't work out well. And they have, by miracle, had a backup plan with Seth Rollins, but that was a miracle. But I think that's another problem, and we had that again several years later with Charlotte. Remember Charlotte? Charlotte Flair, she was told backstage reportedly, it could be completely wrong, that at Survivor Series, when she was going to have a match with Ronda Rousey due to Becky's injury, even though fans were saying we want Becky and Ronda to fight eventually at WrestleMania, Vince already promised Charlotte, you're going to have the main event. We're not going to change it. We're just going to let you have this match and then have it again. That's the problem I'm thinking why some talent might not be motivated as much as in WWE at least, because they've already had someone cut in line, and because Vince will selectively enforce it. And here's the thing, I agree with Undertaker a little bit. WWE is in a bad place, but not in the way he's probably thinking. I could be wrong on that. It's because WWE has become completely creatively stagnant. I mean, outside of Drew McIntyre, Bray Wyatt, Alexa Bliss, Roman Reigns, really, outside of who they're feuding with, what else is there to watch in WWE? What makes you want to say, I want to watch that? I'll sit through the garbage and watch through it. And then you gotta contend with the fact that, at least with SmackDown, you could at least watch all of it. It's 2 hours, it can be a breeze. With Raw, you're being told, hey, there's 30 minutes of content that's actually worth it on there, but you have to sit through 2 hours and 30 minutes, and sometimes we'll screw up the 30 minutes of content, so you might actually have less time to watch. So, and it's become more of a chore. And then you got NXT, which is on the border a little bit. If it crosses it's completely garbage route, then that's dead for fans. So, unless the USA Network does change things up because of the NBC stuff that's going on. But yeah, I'm just giving my 2 cents on this. Like, I get the feeling Undertaker had some points going for him, but then when you get to this one part, it's like, well, that completely we screwed up big time. So, yeah, what do we do with that? Yeah, it was, yeah, it was problematic at the time with hearing all that, but like to say, but like having an issue that fans were like, uh, if that actually happened back, the whole stuff we hear about back then, saying, oh well, that era is completely great. Like if Undertaker, I get the feeling Undertaker probably didn't mean it in like a mean way, or say, and probably does acknowledge there was some stuff that should be left alone. But I feel like this podcast really did not help him. And people are now saying, oh, this is why Undertaker doesn't do interviews back then, because he'll say something stupid. So, yeah. He had something going, then he train wrecks it in my mind on that last bit. So if you disagree, that's perfectly fine. That's my opinion at the end of the day. I still like The Undertaker as a person, as a wrestler. I don't know him as a person, so yeah, you can make your bets on that. But we'll have to see if anything comes out of all this. I don't think anything's really going to come out of all this other than a couple of discourse and memes on his video game career. Because they're having people saying like, oh, so he hates video games, and now they're memeing the hell out of it, which was to be expected. I saw that coming, honestly. It's not up to the Bernie Sanders memes we're dealing with, but at least the Bernie Sanders meme went to charity with Bernie Sanders selling shirts of it. So, yeah, that's about it. So, this was Neo Reality, the WrestleVerse. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe. Check out my other channels in the description below. I'll see you all next time, and hopefully a much lighter discussion in wrestling fandom. Peace.